Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings to all of you joining us for today's class, uh, where we'll be taking you through economics. So, in today's class, I'll be talking on the scope of economics. All right. While uh, I call this lesson two, the subsequent lessons may come from other lecturers. Now, um, want to look at the scope of economics, and the first thing is what is when we say scope, what do we mean? What is the meaning of the word scope? The scope of something means the field, the field of study, the province of that thing. When we are talking about the scope of economics, we must indicate whether it is a science subject or an art subject. And then by the time we even say it is a science subject or an art subject, if it is a science subject, we must also ask ourselves, is it a positive science or a normative science? So we'll also talk of scope of economics. We also have to look into the subject matter of economics. So now let's answer the question of what is the field of economics. Economics is a science subject. But this time around, it's not going to be a pure science subject. And that is why we're going to look at it in several dimensions. First of all, in your definition of science, science is what? The systematic study of nature. Now let's look at economics as a science field. Now the first thing is, science is systematic, and it traces relationship between causes and effects. So, and this reflects to economic. Another attribute of science is that its phenomena should be amenable and also measurable. Applying this characteristic, we find that economics is a branch of knowledge where the various facts relevant to it have been systematically collected, classified, and analyzed. Therefore, economics is considered a science. Economics investigates the possibility of deducing generalization as regards to economic motives of human beings, the motive of individuals and business firms who can be very easily measured in terms of money. Now we can conclude economics is a science. Now we're also going to proceed and we'll mention the fact that economics is not a pure science, but a social science. Now, to understand social science, we need to bear in mind that laborers are working on materials drawn from all over the world and producing commodities to be sold over the entire world in order to exchange goods from all parts of the world to satisfy their needs or their wants. There is therefore a close interdependence of millions of people living in distant lands. Unknown to each other, they don't even know themselves. In this way, the process of satisfying wants is not only an individual process, but also a social process. in economics, one has therefore to study social behavior, the behavior of men and the behavior of groups of men. Now, economics can also be seen as an art. So, right away, we are going to look at economics as an art. An art is a system of rules for the attainment of a given end or a given goal or objective. A science teaches us to know, and art teaches us to do. And this is the main difference. When we apply this definition, we find that economics offers us practical guidance in the solution of economic problems. Also now, science and art, they are complementary to each other. And here, we will see that economics is both a science and an art. Now, like I said right from the introduction, we also need to look at, see if economy is science, is it a positive science or a normative science? And then, surprisingly, I will again say that economics is both a social science and a normative science. Let me explain. When we talk of positive science, we are only describing what is a normative science prescribes. So now, positive science, it actually describes what science is. It describes what science, what it is, what we should consider science is positive science. Then we will now get to normative science. From the word normative science come from the word normal. Normally, how is it supposed to be? So you now come to understand the difference between a positive science and a normative science. I said positive science describes what it is, what science is, what the field is. Normative science now prescribe what it was supposed to be, how it ought to be, what that field, that science normally was supposed to be. So it means now that positive science does not indicate what is good or what is bad to the society. What it does is that it will simply provide results for economic analysis of a problem. Now, on the other hand, normative science, it is normally supposed to prescribe how it is, what it ought to be, and therefore it makes a difference, a distinction between what is good and what is bad to the society. It prescribes what should be done to promote human welfare or well-being. A positive statement is based on facts. Therefore, a normative statement involves ethical values. For example, 12% of the labor force in Cameroon were unemployed last year. This statement is a positive statement which could be verified by scientific measures. Another one, 12% unemployment is too high. Now this statement now is normative. Why? Because the positive statement simply said that in Cameroon, 12% of the labor force were unemployed last year. But the normative statement now is telling you the difference between the bad and the good of it. Saying that 12% of unemployment is too high. Now this is normative. It's based on fact. It has a standard of what is unreasonable. It also has to suggest how we can rectify the situation. And economics is into it. So you now see economics is both a positive science and a normative science. I believe you're getting what I'm saying. Now, let's move ahead and then we will look at methodology of economics. So, we'll be talking about methodology of economics, an important part of your lessons. First thing first, when we say methodology, we just mean methods. Methods. What are the methods that we can use to solve economic problems? There are two methods. So we have the deductive method and the inductive method. Economics is a science that adopts two methods for discovery of its laws and principles. Like I said, there are two, namely deductive method and inductive method. So let's start with the deductive method. When we get to deductive method, let me explain. Deductive method, we descend from the general to particular. Meaning that you look at something in the general aspect, then you can conclude in a particular point of view. This is a deductive method of discovery. So, for example, we can start from a certain principle that are self-evident or based on strict observation. They will now carry them down as a process of pure reasoning. We look at the consequences that they implicitly contain. Example, let's say traders earn profit in their businesses. This statement is a general statement. All traders, we will not mention a particular trader. So all traders, they make profit in their businesses. Now, when you say this, it is acceptable without even verifying with the traders whether they make profit or not. Now, if I say that traders make profit, now Joshua is a trader. What does it mean? It means Joshua makes profit. I've just deduced, because I have taken from a general aspect that all traders make profit. So since Joshua is a trader, he makes profit. Now, the deductive method is useful in analyzing complex economic deductions, where we have causes and effects that are mixed up. Now, however, the deductive method is useful only if certain assumptions are valid. So if you make the first assumption to be wrong, it simply means that the deductive method will not be valid in that situation. For example, when you take a standpoint that traders earn profit, this is true if only the demand for the commodity is more. So if the demand of the commodity is not more, then it means they will not have more and more profit. So it means now that your deduction will not help. Now we have another type of economic method, which is inductive method. Now this method mounts up from particular to general, meaning that we now begin with a observation of particular fact, and then we can proceed, and in reasoning we make it general. This is inductive or reasoning by induction. So um we begin with observation of particular facts, then with the help of reasoning founded on experience, so as to formulate laws and theorem on the basis of what we observe. Let's take an example. Data on consumption of poor, middle, and rich income groups of people are collected, classified, and analyzed, and important conclusions are drawn out from the result. So this is an inductive method of reasoning, of solving economic problems. In deductive method, we start from certain principles that are either indisputable or based on strict observation and draw inferences about individual cases. In inductive method, on the other hand, in inductive method now, a particular case is examined to establish a general or a universal fact. Now, I want you to know that all the two methods, the inductive and the deductive method, they are useful in economic analysis. I believe by now you should have a good comprehension of economic methodology. And then after looking at that, we shall now talk on the subject matter of economics. Subject matter of economics. Here I'll be saying two things. Number one, the first thing I'll be saying is that we can study economics through the traditional approach or the modern approach. When we talk of the traditional approach, we mean studying economics under the 5 major divisions of economics, which include consumption, production, exchange, distribution, and public finance. Now, consumption is simply the satisfaction of human wants through the use of goods and services. What about production? Production, it's simply the creation of goods and services, right? Goods that satisfy human wants are viewed as bundles of utility. Production would mean creation of utility, or producing or creating things to satisfy human wants. To carry out production, the resources like land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship are needed. Then the next is I mentioned is exchange, which means the goods that are produced must not only be self-consumed. You who is producing, you can exchange with other producers. You can exchange with money. So you are not the only one to consume. You to self-consume your goods. You can make it for sale. They are sold to buyers in the market, and then the process of buying and selling also constitute what we call exchange. Now, how about distribution, which is the fourth point? Distribution here let's look at the production of any agricultural commodity. I'll be saying that these require four factors, namely land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Now, these four factors of production, they are to be rewarded for their services rendered in the process of production. This is how they are rewarded. The owner of the land will get his rent. So the reward for land is rent. The laborers, they will earn their wages or salary. So the reward to labor is wage or salary. The capitalist is given an interest. So the reward to capital is interest. And the entrepreneur is rewarded with profit. The process of determining rent, wage, the interest and the profit is known as distribution. Now, the last, which is public finance, here it now talks on how the government will get money and how the government will spend that money. So in public finance, we study about public revenue and public expenditure. Now let's look at the modern approach. Under the modern approach, we will divide economics into two broad categories, branches, which we shall call microeconomics and macroeconomics. So first thing first, microeconomics, which analyzes the economic behavior of any particular decision-making unit, such as a household, a firm, a business, and so on. Microeconomics actually studies the flow of economic resources or factors of production from the household or resource owners to the business firms, and flow of goods and services from the business now back to the households. It studies the behavior of individual decisions, the decision-making units, with regard to fixation of price and output and its reaction to changes in demand and supply conditions. So, microeconomics can also be called the price theory. And you know the father of, let me just mention the father of microeconomics, Adam Smith. The second branch will talk of macroeconomic, which studies the behavior of economic system as a whole, or now all the decision-making unit put together. So macroeconomics deals with the behavior of aggregate like total employment, gross national product (GNP), national income, general price level, and so on. So macroeconomic is known as the income theory. So while the microeconomic can be known as the price theory, macroeconomics will be known as the income theory. So now, microeconomics can give an idea of the functioning of the economy as a whole. Now, on the other hand, macroeconomic ignores the individual preferences and then the welfare of the people. I want you to know, now let's look at a reality. Something can be true about an individual or a part or a group of the people, and then it must not necessarily be true about the whole economy. What is true about the whole may not apply to some people or some individual decision-making units. So, by studying about a single small farmer and then you take a generalization, it cannot make it cannot be made about all the small farmers. Now, also, general nature of all small farmers in the state need to be true in case of a particular small farmer. So therefore, we can say that the study of both micro and macroeconomic is essential to understand the whole system, the whole economic system or system of economic activities. So here we end with micro and macroeconomics, and then generally the scope of economics. So see you in our next class. Bye.